the likud that it came out for Shabbos Parshas Matas Masei Tov Shimem for Likutei Sichos was the Sikha that the Rebbe said the year before, Tov Shin Lametes Matas Masei. And in that Sikha, the Rebbe brings the Tanchume, where it says that when the Eibishter told Yecheskel the Tzuras Habayis, the shape and the way the Beis Hamikdosh is supposed to look and the way the Beis Hamikdosh is supposed to be built. So Yecheskel answered the Eibishter, Ad achshav anu nesuni begelo be'eretz tzneinu, we're in Golos now, and you're telling me to tell them the Tzuras Habayis, the shape of the Bayis. V'chi yechelun hein laseis. Can they do it now? They're in Golos. Haniach lem achi alam unagela. Leave it till they go up to Golos, and then you'll tell them. The Rebbe answered him, V'chi b'shvil shabonai nesuni begelo yebinian beisi bottle, that because my children are on Golos, so the building of the Beis Hamikdosh should be bottled, should not be done. And therefore he told him that therefore you should teach him the Tzuras Habayis, the looks of the Bayis and the shape and everything how it's supposed to be. So from here the Rebbe learns out that when you learn about the Tzuras Habayis, you learn about the way the Beis Hamikdosh looked, you are actually building the Beis Hamikdosh. Because that's what the Eibishter said to Yecheskel. Because they're in Golos, they shouldn't build the Beis Hamikdosh. That's why I'm telling you that Tzuras Habayis, so this building Beis Hamikdosh. So the Rebbe brings out from here that when you learn Hilchas Beis Abchira, when you learn the halachas of the building of the Beis Hamikdosh, you are actually mekayim the mitzvah of building the Beis Hamikdosh. This came out for, as I said, for Shabbos Parshas Matis Masei Tov Shin Mem. After the Sikha came out, I wrote in the Ha'aras Biyurim of New York of 770, a shaila, what does that mean? What do you mean that when we're learning about the tzura, the shape of the bayis, and what the bayis is supposed to look, that's called building the bayis? Why is it called building the bayis? So I wrote that l'chura the pshat is like this. Just like when a person builds a building, there are many stages in the building. One of the stages is that you make blueprints, and you study the blueprints, and you write down, and you learn how the shape should be, and then you actually start building. So be'emes, the physical building of the bayis starts when you actually start building and you bring the builders and they start building. But in the broader sense, when you start learning, writing and learning, studying the blueprints, it's already the beginning of the building. That's how the process of the building starts. And that's probably what the Rebbe means. That's what I wrote. My brother Nochem was the Mareches, the Eirech of the Ha'aras Atmimim 770. So he put it into the Ha'aras Biyurim of Ha'aras Atmimim of 770. What he did was, when I wrote the Lashon that this is like the blueprints, he changed it from the word blueprints to the Lashon Difterois or Pinkisois, which is the Hebrew word for blueprints. But this is a Lashon taken from the Medrash, where it says, Benegei, the Torah, that the Eibishter used the Torah as the blueprints of the creation. So there it says the Lashon Difterois or Pinkisois. So he changed it for that Lashon. And he printed it. Came to Shabbos Parshas Re'ei Tov Shimem, the Rebbe spoke about it. The Rebbe said that I explained that when you learn about the Beis Hamikdosh, you are actually building the Beis Hamikdosh. So he said somebody asked, which means in the Oris Hatmimim, someone asked that what is the pshat, and he explained, and the Rebbe brought what I explained there, that it's like the diftirois and pinkisois, and the Rebbe used the Lashon, if I remember correctly. This is similar to the Lashon of the Medrash when they gave the creation of the world, that the Torah was the blueprints. It says difterois and pinkisois. So here too, if you learn the halachas of what the Beis Hamikdosh looked like and how it's supposed to be built, you're learning the blueprints, and the blueprints is the beginning of the building. But the Rebbe said that's not what he really meant. It's deeper than that. And the Rebbe explained what it means is like this. What is the pshat? That by learning about it, it is as if you're building, that you are actually building the Beis Hamikdosh. So the Rebbe says like this: in the Beis Hamikdosh there are two inyonim. There's the Beis Hamikdosh Hagashmi, there's the physical Beis Hamikdosh, which is made of eitzim, avonim, stones and wood, etc., etc. And then you had the machshava and the kavanah that's there in the building of the Beis Hamikdosh. Like you had the Chachmei Lev, the Chachamim who were involved in the building of the Beis Hamikdosh. And we find this by Beni Mitzvahs that there are two parts. Like the Bach says that in Mitzvah's film, the mitzvah, the physical mitzvah is the actual putting on film, but part of the mitzvah is the kavanah that you have, shibud hameich v'alev, that you're giving over your brain, your intellect, and your midas, and your emotions, giving over to Hashem. So it's not the kavanah of the mitzvah. This is part of the mitzvah. And the same thing with mitzvah tzitzis. Laman tiskura, that you wear tzitzis in order to remember all the mitzvahs. This is kavanah, is part of the mitzvah. The same thing with sukkah, the kavanah that you have to remember that the Eibishter had eaten in sukkahs in the midbar. This is part of the mitzvah. So the same thing if the gate the Beis Hamikdosh. The physical Beis Hamikdosh is one part of the Beis Hamikdosh, and then you have the machshove in the building of the Beis Hamikdosh. That's another part of the Beis Hamikdosh. That's a chachmei lev of the Beis Hamikdosh, like it was by the Mishkan. So you have the kavanah of it, and the kavanah even before you actually start building. But when you have the kavanah in the Mishkan, the machshove about the Mishkan, that is part of the building of the Mishkan. And he gave example, just like when you build the physical part of the Beis Hamikdosh. So even though it takes a long time, so the person who starts off the building, there was no Beis Hamikdosh yet, he just put on the first brick. But that is part of building the Beis Hamikdash. And when the Beis Hamikdash is finished, like the Beis Hamikdash by Shlomo Melech took 7 years, when the Beis Hamikdash is finished, the person who started it, and when he did it, there was no Beis Hamikdash yet, he is part of the building of the Beis Hamikdash. The same in the Kavanah. The Kavanah that's there in the building of the Beis Hamikdash. So when we have the Kavanah now, even though there's not finished yet because there is no Beis Hamikdash yet, but since this is the Kavanah of the Beis Hamikdash, so from the Kavanah aspect of the Beis Hamikdash, we are doing the building of the Beis Hamikdash, because the kavanah of the Beis Hamikdash is part of the mitzvah of the Beis Hamikdash itself, mitzvah of the building. In other words, because there are two parts of the building, the physical part and the kavanah part, and when we learn now and understand the tzuras habayis the way it's supposed to be built, we are actually having the kavanah of the building of the Beis Hamikdash, which is part of the mitzvah building the Beis Hamikdash. So Rebbe was machadash a big inyan here that it's deeper than what we think, that it's just the beginning of the Beis Hamikdash, because it's a blueprint of the Beis Hamikdash. The blueprint lav dafka that comes out from the Sikha, he didn't say it, that as a blueprint lav dafka is the beginning of the building. But the kavanah of the Beis Hamikdash is part of the spiritual part of the building of the Beis Hamikdash, which is part of the mitzvah, and therefore by learning the halachas of how to build the Beis Hamikdash, we are basically mekayim the mitzvah of building the Beis Hamikdash.